is 6:31 and we will open the meeting. Ryan, could you send us through the virtual meeting information? And I see that you are a recorder.
Yes, pursuant to Governor Baker's March 12th, 2020 order suspending certain provisions of the Open Meeting Law, General Law, Chapter 30A, Section 18, and the Governor's March 15th, 2020 order imposing strict limitations on the number of people that may gather in one place. This meeting of the Hubbardston Select Board will be conducted via remote participation to the greatest extent possible. Specific information and the general guidelines for remote participation by members of the public and/or parties with the right and/or requirement to attend this meeting can be found on the town website. No in-person attendance, members of the public will be permitted, but every effort will be made to ensure the public can adequately access the proceedings in real time via Zoom. In the event that we are unable to do so, despite best efforts, we will post on the town's website a comprehensive record of proceedings after the meeting.
Okay, thank you. We'll move to open session now. I see we have a number of attendees. I see 5 planning board members on there. I see Bowie and Damon, and then I see Travis as well. I know a number of these are coming up later during planning board and other agenda items. But has anyone indicated to you that they'd like to speak on open session?
They have not indicated that, no.
Okay, and just saying it out loud because we actually did do it last week. If somebody comes on late, they'll be added as an open session item whenever it makes sense for the meeting, but we won't make them wait till the end because of the technology we're sort of going through here. So, okay. Moving on to announcements, frozen assets. I guess that's the sort of the one we have out there. Any updates or anything, Katie?
The outhouse is on the pond. It's officially out there. It's sitting there waiting for the ice to melt. So yeah, we sit back and wait. I do have tentative dates. I am working on the Hubbardston Fair, the Dinghy Dash, and Field Day with the Lions this year. Which I will start announcing and working on once I get confirmation of the dates. But we're starting already on spring stuff. We're thinking spring and summer. So while we sit here with frozen assets waiting, we're going to work on other projects.
Cool. I don't suppose we can pay double and change our timeframes on the frozen assets, can we?
No, nice try. That's why we collect all the forms before we put it out there. So that way, you had to give me the form before we put the outhouse out.
It's been cold and it's going to stay cold for a while. So,
yep.
All right. Well, okay. Well, thanks for the update. So presentations, Ryan, were you able to pull together what you considered to be organized enough, I suppose, for lack of a better way to say it, on the 2021 community survey?
Yeah, so enough data to present for sure. There's many ways to present and organize the data. So we'll be looking to see if the board wants any additional organization. And we also asked a lot of questions about people using certain utilities, and they were open-ended. So I need to do some statistical analysis on those. They came in as 373 different number answers. So we're just going to shape that data a little bit. But in general, I can just go ahead and start the presentation. Okay, so statistically, the survey saw 529 respondents, which was more than the 500 that I was hoping to get, which is good. It's equal to 11% of Hubbardston's 2018 population, or 15% of the registered voters from this November, which I think is a pretty strong sample for any community survey, especially looking at other community surveys that have been done. I've been following a few communities that are also doing surveys. This is pretty consistent. So it's not everybody, but it certainly is enough to glean some data. So of this group, 64% had school-aged children in their households, which is not surprised. Children make up a large percentage of the Hubbardston population. So just something to know about the data. This online survey ran from December 16th to January 11th, so plenty of time for responses. It was hosted on Google Forms and was advertised on the town website, the Facebook site, the town Twitter, and then also the Board of Selectmen mailed 2 reminders to all Hubbardston residents, encouraging them to participate. So after each mailing, there was a large spike in participation. So we do believe that although this is primarily an online survey, we did capture quite a few responses from the mailings, which signifies, you know, a certain way of reaching residents, which makes this data a little bit more solid.
Yeah, and it
And-
was, just if I could just add real quick, this was not like a 3-question, 2-minute thing. You know, to get that many responses for something that took some time, I mean, with a lot of different questions, you know, I think that's great. And I mean, the 529 respondents, considering how many kids there are in town, is actually a lot more, right? You know, I know you have a couple data points with the 11% and 15%, but that's a really big percentage of, you know, overall households.
Yeah, and it's
Brian.
certainly,
Excuse me, I was just curious, did you break it down also by age groupings? Just curious.
we actually didn't do it by age. As I was part to get into some of it, this was a collaborative effort. We sent it out to all the town boards and staff members to see if they could offer some feedback on the questions. They edited the questions in many cases, and one of the feedback I got about asking about age is who cares? Right? So we took that question out just to make sure we could solicit responses.
And Ryan, sorry, I'm definitely not going to keep interrupting you, but Alice does have her hand up. I'm not exactly sure when that went up, but I just noticed.
Hi, Alice.
My only question was whether I need to call my meeting to order since we're all here under the open meeting laws, or whether we can just sit and listen to the first half hour.
As long as you aren't deliberating in the chat, you don't actually have to call to order until we bring you in.
Okay, that's it. I'll sit back and wait for you. Okay, it's interesting.
Just kicking Alice out here. All right. Not something I would do often or ever. Okay, so again, just a collaboration. I think that's important. Everybody on the town official side had a chance to weigh in, and many did. So the questions were made a lot better by this collaboration. All right, in general, I'm going to let the data speak for itself, but just wanted to highlight each piece. Why do you live in Hubbardston? Rural character, open space, good schools, and low taxes. I'm sorry. Rural character, open space, low taxes, low housing costs, and recreational opportunities top the charts, with good schools just slightly behind. How do you get information from town government? Okay, so the town website is primary for these respondents. Facebook, which is no surprise since we advertise there. The word of mouth, which is good. We want people talking about the town. Direct mailings, and this category here is public meetings or in-person or video meetings, which is good. Those are all the different ways that we try and reach people. Okay, we also asked, that's not the right one. A lot of stuff open, I apologize. How could we improve communication? Are you looking at a Word document, folks?
Yes.
Okay. So we have, and I'm going to put these together into, you know, a more readable document, but this is all the different ways people said that we could improve communication. I've read every single one and internalized them. A lot of them have to do with newsletters, which we do put out, which means we need to be more advertising with our newsletter. And then a lot of comments about continuing to use social media or do the postcard mailings that we've been doing, which is good to hear. We wanted to make sure that those were positively received. So a lot of good information from people writing in how that we can improve communication, which is important.
I didn't have a chance to scan that. Did people say allow us to comment on the Facebook page?
No.
Okay, good.
Not that I could see. Yeah.
Okay.
Hey, we asked this about the recycling center more to see how how much people knew about our recycling center. So do you use it? It doesn't mean they didn't know about it, but more than half the town said they don't use it. And then the rest of the results were split between they didn't know that it was a recycling center and they did use it. So 25% of households use the recycling center, which I think is pretty good. Getting into some road maintenance, a little bit more than half the town is familiar with the 5-year road maintenance plan, which is good. We've been trying to get this information out. Do you think it's adequate? Again, it breaks down about the same, but half the folks think that the 5-year road maintenance plan is adequate. Should the town perform additional road maintenance? 66% or a lot more than half, a little less than 3/4 believe that the town should perform additional road maintenance. Then we asked for those who thought, so there's only 351 responses here. So if they thought road maintenance was inadequate, would they support a reasonable tax increase? 60% of those respondents said yes. And then of those who did say yes, that brings it down to 212 responses. Overwhelming number of residents said $100 annually. And then almost 90% said no more than 200 annually for supporting additional road maintenance. And these questions were asked in a vacuum, so I will caution that. We asked many different, would you support additional monies for? So it would have to be looked at in totality, of course. Difficult to do on the survey, but these are interesting data points for the board. Then we asked people, if you didn't want to increase taxes, but you did think there should be additional road maintenance, how would you do it? It broke down with most suggesting that we cut other services to pay for roads, do an assessment or betterments, assess a betterment, which is difficult to do, but an interesting way to handle that problem. And then town borrowing. So town borrowing would be a budgetary impact item, or might include a debt exclusion. So it's a little bit of a complicated answer, but there is some support for that there. And these questions came from our Economic Development Committee. Some interesting questions here. So they asked, the first stating that the EDC is working to support local business. Are you for or against improving the current sign bylaw to make it easier to understand? So there were very few people that were against changing it. 30% were straight for it. And then 66% said that they needed more information. So what that means is if there is going to be a sign bylaw change, it should be heavily advertised so people know what they're voting on. Another question from the EDC stating that the current bylaw allows for no more than 20% of square footage of residence to be used for home-based business. They asked, would you support 20%, 30%, 40%, or not having an opinion? So most people did have an opinion, with 36% saying that they did not. And it was 40% got the largest, then maintaining the 20%, and 30% came in at 17%. Again, the EDC asks, our current bylaw for home-based businesses permits no more than one non-resident assistant or employee. So both of these questions are asking, would you expand a home business or would you support it? And the data broke down in this way here, with most people having an opinion and then varied results on supporting of certain numbers. Another interesting question from the EDC, excluding gasoline, how many times a week do you purchase services from Hubbardston's? Excluding gasoline, because there is that one spot and is the most likely way that someone would purchase services in Hubbardston. The majority said less than once a week, with once a week coming in second and 2 to 3 making up about 1/4 of the respondents. Okay, and would you support creating a commercial overlay that would allow for certain businesses to be allowed along Route 68? So more than half said they would support more business. Very few said that they wouldn't support more business, but a large percentage said they would want to know more about those businesses, which I don't think is a surprise. Okay, on the town services and facilities side, I got a dropout here. So this is the actual survey itself. So you're seeing the behind the scenes here. Sorry for the scrolling. So these are the town report cards. So I'll move through pretty quickly with these, but we will make them available publicly and all this information available publicly. Here are the Board of Selectmen results, with the blue being 1 out of 5, the light blue being no opinion, and then it moves as you move from left to right, 2, 5. So 1 being the lowest score, 5 being the most. So this is the Board of Selectmen. And then the Planning Board, so that would be interesting to both boards here. And then the Board of Health. And then this guy, which is fun to learn about yourself. A lot of support for our public safety, both police and fire. A lot of support here for public works. Okay, this is the finance team. We did get some feedback saying that this should have been broken up more, so I'm not sure how reliable these results are. Our finance team is made up of 5 different departments, so we will use this data, but perhaps in the future we would break it up. Report card for the town clerk's office. We got some feedback about land use. We did combine these departments, so you're seeing opinions on multiple departments here and the execution of permits. So we might break this up in the future to better understand the data. Here is the senior center. The senior center, of course, includes senior services, library, and then the 3 schools. So the Quabbin Middle and High Schools, the Center School, and then Monty Tech. And then lastly, the Open Space Board. Okay, and we used metrics of access, quality, and maintenance for open space. Those are the town report cards. I moved through quick. We will make that available for people to see and comment on if they would choose. But useful for the board for sure to see how residents are responding to the inputs and services. Okay, and here are some results from the survey with the raw data, of course, going to be made available as soon as I can put it into an understandable context. 5 biggest problems facing the town now, according to respondents, was limited cellular and broadband services. The overwhelming majority of folks choosing that as their #1 option. And every person that responded here was allowed to pick 5. So these were the largest of the choices, ranging of 15 choices. Second being lack of retail business. 3rd, road conditions. 4th, aging infrastructure. And that included not having water and sewer as well, which we might break out in a future survey to gauge the difference, because aging infrastructure often points to culverts, roads, buildings, etc. And then specifically, poor municipal building conditions was 5th. Asked slightly different, what folks thought the biggest problems would be facing the town 5 years from now. You see similar answers, but in different ways. In a new answer, taking off buildings and adding tax increases. So cellular and broadband services was still #1. Road conditions moved to #2. Aging infrastructure and water and sewer moved to #3. Lack of retail business dropped to 4, and tax increases joined this list. So we asked a series of questions to help the town officials make decisions about the town's municipal building problem. So this was a pretty simple question. It was a much longer question to read about laying out the problem with the town's municipal buildings. Many people are familiar with this argument, but we did lay it out or try and make it as concise as possible. And there were several edits of that. You could have written it many different ways. But when asked what should the town do about these problems, 78.6 said they should prioritize the building of new buildings, and that has many forms. So again, just general. And 21% said that the town shouldn't do anything. Oh, and I need to pop out here again. So you can see here all the different things we asked, what are problems with the town as people see it? Okay, here's the long entry for the municipal building question. And then here was the building priorities. We certainly categorized them in certain ways, and there was some criticism that we could have organized in a different way, but we had to start somewhere. So it starts from left to right, strongly agree to strongly disagree. So the first one is construct a new building that houses police, fire, town offices, and senior center. So one big building to house them all. Here was the resulting answers. So a lot on the strong and the disagree, with most answers being in the center. This question asked just build a public safety building alone. That one had the most support, which matches data that came from the last town-wide community survey that you did. So there seems to be a lot of support for a public safety building. Next question was construct a new town hall, and you see kind of a bell curve here. So answers right around the median. The next one was renovate the Slade building to house all town offices, and you're getting a bell curve with mostly disagree on this side. Another version was construct a new senior center, and you have a mostly no opinion with a bell curve around it. Renovate the Slade building to house a senior center. You see more support for that, but a nice general curve here. And then the last version was repair and renovate the library with a lot of support for that. I know I'm moving fast. There's plenty of time to interpret the data. I just wanted to give a general presentation and then see what the board wanted to do in the future for using this data. So we asked if you think the town should address its building needs. Remember, not everyone did, so this is only 418 responses. By prioritizing solutions, would you support increasing taxes? And of that group that thought that the town should make this a priority, 73% said they would be willing to increase their taxes. And then we asked again, how much would you be willing to ask if this was something that you did prioritize? So it drops down to 305 responses, but overwhelmingly $200 or less of an increase in taxes was supported, with a small percentage saying that they would increase it even more than that. Okay, so this one's interesting. If you didn't support increasing taxes, but thought the town should do something about it, and I will break this out for the board, but there was borrowing and cuts, which split evenly, and then I think it's 100 different other options that the town could do. And I will break that out for the board. That includes grants to don't increase my taxes to you shouldn't have done this or that. There's just lots of different interesting answers there. We asked some questions about taxes. This is always important. We care very deeply about making sure that we spend the money correctly and that we don't overburden our residents with taxes. So we asked property taxes in Hubbard. We told the residents that Hubbardston's taxes fund town services. Do you think you get good value? 61% said yes, and 38% said no of the 532 respondents. And we did the caveat that I think everyone agrees with, that very few people like to pay taxes, but do you believe that property taxes in Hubbardston are too high? 66% said no, and 33% said yes. And then we asked if you think that property taxes are not too high, so this dropped responses down to 352. Would you be willing to increase your annual taxes in order to support, we said, the 5 biggest problems facing the town now? And we saw a similar breakout as we've seen in other tax questions, with the majority of support 200 to 100 annually an increase in taxes. So that was a pretty consistent answer, and I think a good data point for the board for any tax increases for all the different problems. It seems to be majority, if they're willing to support the tax increase, that it would be less than 200. Okay, and this is the same question, but to support the longer term problems, and you see a similar breakdown. Okay, so that's a ton of data. I know that that information is available. Oh, I also wanted to show you one more thing, sorry. And this was my favorite part of the survey by far. Give me 1 second. Okay, we have 14 pages of, we asked residents just generally, is there anything you want to tell the town? Which I think is a good exercise. And we have 14 pages of responses. A lot of stuff with the road, some stuff about employees or businesses, how to grow the town, a lot of stuff about infrastructure and services like internet. And that's not a surprise since we asked about it. Some comments about the survey in general, that some of the tax questions were leading and some of the building questions were leading, which is a fair criticism. But just some good data that I've poured through. And just for a little bit of levity, one person said that they would never support me because I don't live in town. So I'm sorry to that person. But appreciate the feedback.
Well, that's great.
That's it.
Yeah. Thank you for doing that. I think that's incredibly valuable, and the responses are, you know, the amount of responses sort of shows that. So basically at this point now, and you just said it a few minutes ago, but you'd be sort of looking for, you know, we don't just do this to do it, right? We do it because I know why you did it in the first place, right? We tasked you with some of the goals with some difficult sort of questions to ask, and they had to do with infrastructure in town, buildings, that sort of thing. And I think this is a good way to gauge what is worth spending time on. Is that fair?
Yes, and a lot of the responses, which I was very pleased about, said, thank you for allowing us to give this feedback. So it served it in a good way as that type of tool to maybe get some buy-in to fixing some of these problems. I know we won't be able to fix them all, but attacking some of these bigger problems that have been plaguing the town for a bit.
So my 2 cents on that, just because, you know, there's a lot of information on there, but I think some of the main things we've talked about that have been important to us and important to the town over the years are, which is a little bit more recent in the mechanism we are trying or have tried to use for roads. It was overwhelming support there. It's 2/3 for spending some more money in some other way to do that. We tried last year, the year before, whatever that was, to have that sort of separate property tax increase dedicated to a few $100,000, basically matching our Chapter 90 funds that just barely missed, right? And a part of this survey, I know in my mind, I'm glad that was in there when I saw it was part of the initial sort of round of questions, was to find out, because it was so close, and we don't want to keep asking people for stuff if they keep knocking it down, right? It's not what we're trying to do, is force things upon people. But since it was so close, and you have a survey like this with so many respondents, it looks like it might be worth it to ask again, right? I mean, people talked about roads, they want new roads, and they want better roads, and this sort of thing gives us an indication that maybe we should, you know, maybe we need to do better advertising or whatever. But that's one thing that sort of stuck out to me. I don't know what you think about that. Anybody?
Well, it's not just the roads though. It's because there's a lot of things on there that people want.
Well, that
And
was just one thing. Yeah.
Yeah, I know. And I totally agree. Trust me, I want them all too. I want the roads. I want my Wi-Fi to work. I want stuff to quit breaking, you know, things like that. So my whole thing is, I think we need to look at and prioritize which is the most important. And I'm not saying roads aren't. I'm just saying there was a lot of things on that list that we asked about that people wanted. Because if you go after roads, now the other things are going to be put on hold. So which one do we think, do we actually A, have a shot at passing, and B, is most important, or flip that around, most important to actually have a choice at passing? Because once you pass one of these, you're not going to get another one in, because we're going to raise taxes. So once we start screwing around with raising taxes, we're not going to get another one in. So we have to choose very wisely on which one. I'm not disagreeing that roads may be the best option, but I'm just saying, let's not jump on something in 3 seconds, let's look at it as a whole, because if roads pass, then there's no shot at a building. But if people want the building first, then we can't do, I don't think both will pass.
So you just led into my second point. So my first one was just an observation on the roads thing, because that's something that was recent for us and just didn't make it. And feels to me like, whether it's this year or 4 years from now, it might be something that's worth going after. If everybody was against it, then we just move on to something else, right? But at least it gives us an indication, maybe that there is that. My second observation was something that has come up several times over the years, last few years, when we've been talking about buildings, is it's pretty clear on there that, again, who knows what happens when it actually gets to what you have to pay for it. But the public safety building, if a new building is coming, is clearly the one that people most support.
Yes.
It's just another instance of that.
Yeah, so I totally agree with you. But I just worry if we go after, try to do both, that we're gonna fail miserably. And I do feel like the roads, the reason why it didn't quite make it over that hump was for twofold. One, some people didn't hear about it because, there's always people that don't hear about anything. And the other thing is it had no end. And I think that was its downfall, was there was no, you couldn't put the sunset clause or anything like that. So it just went on forever. And that means that we'd have to have a whole nother vote to take it out and stuff like that. So I think honestly, I think those were its two downfalls.
And we tried, just so you know, like we tried to find a mechanism to be able to do that. And we got to a point where the way it was presented was really the only legal way we could present it. Right.
Yeah.
Except for another vote in the future, which people don't trust either, right? Because it's like, you're not really going to vote for it out, right? So that was sort of what we got to. I agree with you fully, but that's a good point. Yeah.
If I could, Dan, if I could add just a bit in terms of what Katie's saying and you're saying, and obviously we need more time and discussion, because the question of the infrastructure, for example, the way I'm looking at it and have been for 8 years, but the buildings aren't going to heal themselves. They're just going to continue to need more and more help, et cetera. And at a certain point, we have to begin to think, when are we throwing good money after bad? So I think this is a key issue, and there's no question. You could say the same thing about the roads. If you ignore them, they're only going to get worse. But I think those are two key issues that we have to tackle, because of the ramifications of what they will cost us eventually in the future. Should we just ignore them?
No, that's the problem. It's been ignored for so long, and you can only kick it down the road for so long. Eventually, somebody's going to have to rip this Band-Aid off and deal with it. And fortunately, with the support that we have, I think the time is now to pick and choose what we're going to deal with.
I agree. Yep.
That's why we're talking about it. This is why this is on the table. We talked about it months ago, or a year or two ago. We can, because of the way votes came in with the senior center, we can just stick our head in the sand and let somebody else in the future deal with it, but we're not. So in that process, which Ryan is spearheaded and has brought through the survey to be able to have us be able to evaluate what makes most sense to pursue, that's where we're on now. So Ryan, what do you think?
Yeah, I think you break it out in future meetings, in individual discussions, and maybe even a workshop just to focus on it. Maybe a meeting that's just focused on that, so you can tease out a plan and a timeline. And then it's very clear from the survey to me that people are craving information about it, and they want a long time to talk about it and to hear about it and to see it. So those are good data points to build a plan, depending on what you want to prioritize. I think that's the way to go.
All right, sounds good. Survey stuff, anyone else, or should we move on and clearly not bring this up again? I think maybe even our next meeting we can, I don't know if the next one's the right one, but sometime soon, have some time to digest the stuff that we've talked about tonight and come up with a plan for action or not, or inaction, whatever we choose on what to do with some of these things we're talking about now. Okay. All right, sounds good. It is 7:06. So unless Ryan, you want to do anything else before we bring in the planning board, we're ready. All right, Alice, when everybody comes in, you can have the table for whatever it takes for you to set things up and open things up.
Okay, now I'm unmuted. I see Chris. Let's see, who do we have here? We have Bill, Chris, Christopher. I see Francois, and I don't know who's on this list. I only have a limited. Ryan?
Yep, the only one I don't see is John.
John.
Everyone else is here.
John is working late. Okay, so I'll call.
Wait,
the-
sorry, Alice, I'm so sorry to interrupt you instantly. But again, I just see Hub Board of Health 1@gmail.com with their hand up. Ryan, would you mind just dealing with that so we don't make somebody wait if they?
Sure.
Thank you.
I'm not sure who that is, although Hub BOH is a good indication. I know Mallory, you're on there. Can you type if that's Kathy? I just don't want to allow someone in that's going to ruin the meeting. Okay, I'm going to let her in.
No Zoom bombs, Kathy.
Hi, thank you for letting me interrupt. I just wanted to speak for about 1 minute on the fact, I apologize if someone else spoke to it earlier tonight, because I got on a few minutes late, that we are moving forward with having 2 clinics, one on February 20th and one on February 21st at the elementary school to vaccinate over 75 population. It will be with the Pfizer vaccine, and we are working hard to get folks registered. Mallory and Kate Saab are working on that. And Dr. Michael Stauder and several nurses that he works with are all volunteering their services, and we're moving forward with vaccines from now on. And that's it in a nutshell.
Interrupt anytime for that.
So I just wanted to get that out there. We're actually reaching out through the senior center and other mechanisms to reach that population more efficiently than just posting it on a website. Okay. So we're moving forward with all of that. And I just wanted to let you guys know. Thank you for letting me interrupt the middle of your meeting, and I'll let you go on. Thank you.
Thanks, Kathy.
Good night, everybody.
Good night.
That's great. Are we ready to move on to planning board here?
Yes.
Yeah, that's good news. I will call the planning board meeting to order, which I have to do under the open meeting laws, declare a quorum present. Like, if you, I don't know, you know all our board members. Our newest board member is Christopher Monroe, who's here tonight. Erica Deck's here. She's our alternate, or associate member rather. Bill Homans, Francois Steiger, and myself. So we thank you for for inviting us. I put together a list of topics of things that are sort of joint interest to, I thought, the planning board and the select board, things that we've been working on. And I've listed them as 8 different things, which I could just go through all of them, and then people can come back with questions, or people from members of my board can chime in if they want. Or I could stop after each one. It's kind of up to you. But I'll start and then we'll pause. So the first thing that that I want to point out is our sign bylaw, which has already been mentioned tonight. So the planning board redrafted Article 17 signs of the Hubbardston zoning bylaw in its entirety for 2020. And then the town but withdrew it because of the COVID situation. But at that point it had been circulated. The draft had been circulated to boards, comments had been obtained. The CEO had had a chance to look at it. Comments were incorporated. I believe it went to town council. And we tried through Zoom to give a public hearing. So I was interested in, if you can give it more publicity, that would be good, because we did not have members of the public that came out, although it is posted on our website. So just as a short explanation for you all and whoever is listening tonight, we shortened it from 14 pages to 8 pages. Our primary objective was to simplify and clarify the bylaw and to address a couple areas that just were plain missing from the other bylaw. So, so we categorized signs. We started with everything, definitions, everything. We just started over. So the signs are primary, canopy, marquee, gateway, multi-ladder tenant or multi-tenant ladder signs, wall signs, LED, and electronic messaging centers, which is EMC, and temporary signs. So then we developed charts which specified which signs are permitted, the size, the illumination hours, and so on, all by zoning district, if you've read it. So just as a few points, internally lit EMC and street spanning banners are not allowed except by a municipality or a nonprofit. LED signs cannot scroll or flash and the brightness is limited. External illuminated signs must focus on the surface of the sign. The light must be directed to the surface of the sign. Signs must be turned off at night in residential districts between 9 p.m. and 7 a.m. In the town center district, the hours are 10 p.m. to 5 a.m. In the commercial districts, 12 a.m. to 5 p.m. So if you're in the commercial district, you can stay open till midnight, have your light on till midnight. So these hours would not apply to gateway signs or to service station LED signs. Permanent signs require a permit from the building inspector. Temporary signs may only be displayed for 30 days prior and 10 days following an event. And this would include political signs, election signs, and contractor real estate signs. And temporary signs placed by private parties on public property are limited to 14 days and must have a name and contact information on and date posted, first set out, put on them. And then the town can remove and destroy those signs if they're up longer than allowed and can impose a $10 fine per sign for doing so. So that isn't the whole sign, thing, but it gives you an idea. To get the size limits, we basically took most of the old sign limits, but we did go out and measure signs. So that doesn't increase them dramatically or decrease them dramatically. We did allow larger signs in of course, the commercial districts. There is an avenue to appeal a decision or to get something through a special permit. So there's a few, we tried to think about every situation that would come up, but realized it's never perfect. So there's a little escape hatch there. So our feeling is it should go on the warrant this year. But I agree with you. It's very hard to get public participation. So we can come back to that and see if you agree with that.
Can I ask you a real quick question right now?
Sure.
As far as public property signs,
Yes.
I know we had some regulations before relative to what is basically not allowed.
Yeah.
Is all of that remaining the same or?
Yes, you have to have the permission of your neighbor. You have to have, it can't be in the, in the right of way. It can't obscure the sidewalk. All those things are there.
Okay.
So, I mean, it was tremendous work by Christina. And we worked with a reference group. And just a tremendous amount of work went in it. I'm not saying it's perfect, but it's much better than what we have. And I think we should go forward with it, but how do you get participation? That's an issue. So if you have ideas, I guess we could do some kind of a mailing too. I don't know. I'm up to suggestions.
Okay.
Anyway, next, solar bylaw changes. All right. So the planning board believes that we have Article 20, use of large-scale solar photovoltaic installations. It's the name of our bylaw. We believe it should be extensively revised. It was drafted based on a 2010 model that the state put out. We think a really good model was one recently passed in Athol. We tried to talk about revising this bylaw last year, and you guys seemed very unenthusiastic, but I think it's worth another chance. I want to tell you what Athol's bylaw does that ours doesn't. And maybe I can change your mind. So one of the things it does is it has a pre-application conference, just like the marijuana bylaw, where there's a community outreach hearing that requires notice. So you get input by the neighbors ahead of time. Second, they have a 10-acre minimum lot size. Hubbardston is 2 acres. I can't imagine a solar field on 2 acres, but they have a minimum lot size of 10 acres and a maximum lot size of 20 acres. We have no maximum lot size for a solar field. And the reason they did that is they said because the 5 MW, which is 1 million watts, is what can be accommodated, I believe, on a 10-acre field. And these are also targeted to match what the state is looking for in terms of size of fields. And anyway, I don't want to get too bogged down, but I think it begs the question, do we want unlimited solar fields? Would you be happy with somebody putting in a 50-acre solar field? The Athol bylaw has fencing requirements. 5 feet high is the height limit, can't be higher than that. And it's got to be at least 6 inches off the ground for wildlife. We don't really have a fencing requirement. They have a limit to slope. It can't exceed 10%, which is important because then you don't have a hillside that's completely laddered up with solar fields, which was a big issue in Athol. They've got a very visible field. Another thing they said is building and tree removal is limited to 50% of the parcel, and they can't cut forested areas that are priority core or critical landscape under the SMART program. So they can't clear cut a forested parcel. And installations are only allowed under this bylaw on previously disturbed land, which includes agricultural land, gravel pits, and areas from which the vegetation has previously been removed. So again, getting it away from our forests. They have setbacks 200 feet in front, side and rear, 50 feet. 200 the front, back, and rear. And from water bodies. We don't have setbacks from water bodies. And our setback is only our zoning setback, which is, 75 feet, 100 feet, depending on the zone. So and we're allowed under our bylaw, they can cut up to 50% of the setback. I don't know. I just think the setbacks should be looked at. They have a limit for panel heights of 10 feet or 15 feet in commercial areas. They have no tree cutting in the setback. As I said, Hubbardston allows 50% of the trees to be cut in a setback. They require open areas to be seeded with pollinator mix and maintained as bird and insect habitat, and no herbicides. We don't have a prohibition against herbicides or pesticides, either one in our bylaw. They require construction to be phased to minimize erosion and sedimentation. They have a provision that deals with glare, noise, and visual impact and dark sky standards. And they also, we need to address the issue for installing battery storage units, which became a huge issue this year with us because these solar fields are being correctly refitted with battery storage units. So when 147 came in and said, well, we can double our our solar field, not quite double, but, significantly increase it by putting these battery units in, we had no provision for allowing batteries to be put in. So that's one thing that needs to be done, even if you don't want to adopt any of those other standards. So that's my pitch on solar. I'm happy to pioneer a bylaw based on this, to take the time, sit down, draft it, but it's a lot of money to send it through town council and all the process and deliberate on it if you guys really aren't interested in adopting those standards. So next thing is related. It's a suggestion that has come up. It's putting it also, Ethel has done this. They've adopted a battery energy storage bylaw that would be disconnected from solar fields. And this would allow energy storage to be built, their devices to store energy for future uses. In Athol, they were built adjacent to a utility corridor, and then they discharge, of course, off peak. Again, you don't want to get too much into the weeds, but if you're interested in that technology, they can be built according to Eric Smith, who's the land use planner that we spoke to at length in Athol. They allow it on 2-acre lot sizes. They're about as big a unit as if you think of a shipping container, and they can be clustered, and they can generate pilot money through pilot agreements for towns. So again, that's my number 3, suggested addition of a battery energy storage bylaw. That could also come from windmills, and it isn't just solar energy. Fourth thing is on a sort of a new topic entirely. The land use chapter of the master plan is done, and I think it was put in your documents list. I don't know whether you've had a chance to read it. It's got some revisions that came in today based on some comments I had. But interestingly, they conclude that only 5% of the land in Hubbardston is developable. 51% is undevelopable with absolute constraints. And 37% is undevelopable with partial constraints, meaning if parts of the parcels are not developable, but maybe you could do something with them. And only 8% of land in town has been developed. So to me, that was quite startling. Maybe it isn't to you. They made several suggestions for revising the zoning to attract more business and amenities and younger families. Some of them are harder than others. One very simple one is to allow accessory apartments without requiring the occupant to be related to the owner. We only right now allow an in-law apartments. We create some additional housing, perhaps. I think many of our in-law apartments aren't occupied by in-laws anyway. They're occupied by, nannies or other people anyway, but that was one. They also suggested we should create a zoning district with perhaps 1-acre lots and less frontage, which would help attract younger families. They suggested expanding the town center district because there is no undeveloped land presently in the town center district. And there's very little undeveloped land in the commercial district, and they would suggest expanding that as well. So those are our big conversations going forward that I think we should have. All right, so the fifth thing I want to point out is that we have a bylaw that in our zoning bylaws that expires this year. It's Article 6. It's the rate of development zoning bylaw. It was adopted in Hubbardston in 2001 and amended in 2005, and it expires July 1st of this year. It limits building permits for new dwelling units, including conversions, to 28 or fewer per year. Also limits an applicant to building permits for 2 units per month or 5 per year. Okay, so I asked Mallory to look at how many building permits had actually been issued, and we have never come anywhere close to hitting the ceiling on this. Between 2011 and 2016, there were 4 to 8 permits every year, except for 2014, there were 12. So I don't see a lot of purpose in renewing it. Maybe you think, but I'm open, you know, it's not my judgment call. If you want it renewed, we can. I don't think we're likely to hit that 28 units unless we do, you know, a senior housing or something like that. And if it's affordable, it's exempt under that bylaw. So the rate of development bylaw, that's the 5th section. 6th, I just want to update you all on affordable housing initiatives. You know that you guys all, you appointed, you folks, the planning board to be the Affordable Housing Committee. And as we've taken that seriously, we're pursuing 3 different initiatives to increase the number of affordable housing units in town. In an effort to reach the state's goal of 10%, we're at like 3%. Just as a reminder, in Hubbardston, housing units are considered affordable for households earning $67,000 a year or less, typically young families. And I want to point out that the enrollment in Hubbardston Center School has dropped by 30, you probably all know this, by 35% between 2005 and 2020. That doesn't count an additional drop from the COVID year. This is before COVID started. So you have a 30% drop in 15 years in the number of kids in the school, center school. And we do have an urgent need for affordable housing also for seniors, which was identified in the municipal vulnerability study. The aging baby boomer population, according to statistics given to us by Habitat for Humanity, the senior population in Hubbardston is going to increase by 1,100 people, or 270% between now and 2030. So solving housing for young families and seniors, I think, are quite important. So what have we done? Well, as you know, because you approved it, the town conveyed, or is in the process of conveying, a lot on Ragged Hill Road for Habitat for Humanity North Central Region to construct its first Habitat house in Hubbardston. They submitted a budget to the CPC and to of how they were going to, you know, how much it would cost, and asked for a $20,000 contribution in CPA funds to help with the construction effort. And the CPC approved that grant. Of course, it'll have to go to a town meeting vote. So we hope you'll support it. There's a lot of CPC money that's accumulated, and none of it's actually gone into housing units. It's gone into studies, it's gone into other things, but this would be a concrete start. The planning board also approved spending $15,000 in CPA funds, which were approved back in 2016, to pay legal fees to acquire possibly 3 properties through foreclosure of tax title. It's kind of a long shot, but so far nobody's redeemed those lots. They are a 14-acre lot on Westminster Road, a 6-acre lot also on Westminster Road, not contiguous, and a 31-acre lot off Streeter Road, which is approachable by a right-of-way. So those cases are proceeding through the land court. And as I say, no owner has redeemed them yet. So, you know, we're hopeful. Also, is the last initiative, the planning board, as the Affordable Housing Committee, approved $4,000 to have VHB, which is a consulting firm, conduct a phase 1 environmental study of the town gravel pit and 3 other town-owned lots on Pitcherville Road to see if they could be used to build new senior housing, affordable senior housing, which again, as I said, was a huge identified need. Our senior service directors in the municipal housing study said there's presently a 7-year waiting list to get into Hubbardston House. which is the only affordable senior housing in town. So, and remember, there's 1,000 more coming. So we're hoping it works out. I just got a report, Ryan and I, in the last day, that was the environmental analysis of this lot. The concern was the police department's used it as a firing range, a portion of it for years, so it might have lead contamination, and street sweepings have been deposited there for years. But, and I read this report, I'll put it in so you can read it. It's very lengthy and it's very technical, but I believe his conclusion was that these these contaminations were not major and could be worked around. So if that's true, then we would go to phase 2, which is a feasibility study, which actually will look at how it can be used, how much it would cost to sort of repair the land, and give us a sort of a chart forward. That study is about $26,000 or something. We have the funds to pay for that, and it's already been appropriated. It's part of that 50,000 back in 2016. So we would probably vote. I can't speak for the whole board because you haven't voted it yet, but to go forward with seeing if we can site some senior housing there. It's not in the center of town, which would be ideal, but it's not terribly far down Pitcherville Road, and it is reasonably accessible to Walmart, which is a super stop and shop, and I mean a super, has a grocery store and at least a pharmacy and so on. All right, seventh thing we've been looking at is the question, and I know Mr. Schmidt's here, of limiting the marijuana facilities in town. So a town can vote to cap the number of retail marijuana establishments in town by bylaw if they want to do that. Ours doesn't have a cap. And the only reason it really came to my attention is we've been asked that a couple of times. Excuse me. Many apologies, the door swung open.
Alice, excuse me, this is Jeff Williams. Can you scroll this some more so we can see what number 7 actually is? Thank you.
Yes, so that's just a question for you. If you want to do it, the limit must be 20% or higher than the number of liquor licenses in town. I don't know that the planning board has an opinion on this, but as I say, there's a lot of interest in marijuana establishments. We get asked questions all the time, and this is one that recurs. And then the last thing I'd like to talk about and just to put on the table is we should have, I think, a better process for enforcement of zoning bylaws. Example, I know a person in town that's storing over a dozen unregistered motor vehicles on his lot in a residential zone. Or we've also had, large signs erected and people complain. We had, what do you do with these? It's kind of a hot potato, in my opinion. We said we don't have, as a planning board, any right to trespass on anybody's land. So, we send it to Roland. The last time with the stored cars, he sent it to the police. I just don't think there's a very good way to deal with it, with these complaints. Many of them are very valuable, and really zoning is only as valuable as the enforcement is. If you're going to let anybody do whatever they want anyway, So I think there should be a clearer path for that. And I don't think, even though we're the planning board, we're really equipped to do enforcement. Generally, we can enforce something if somebody is not complying with a special permit, well, then we have a little more leverage with that because we've issued that permit, but just general zoning things. So anyway, I know that Roland should also be included in this discussion, but we're looking for some ideas to help. So that's sort of what we've been up to, and I don't know whether anyone else from the planning board wants to say anything, or I don't see any hands up, so I'll hand it back to Ryan.
It'd be nice if you guys could actually do something around here. Just kidding. You guys put a tremendous amount of work in this. Thank you.
Boy, that really hurt.
I think you know I was kidding there. This is a lot of, these are serious topics and extremely well thought out. I do have a few comments. If I don't know really where to start, but I'm going to start in the first one and we'll just move down and see how that goes. Is that all right?
Sure.
Okay. Again, sorry if my sarcasm didn't come through correctly, but I couldn't appreciate more the time you guys have put in this. But so starting with the sign bylaw, you know, I've run into so many people over the years who have found it so unbelievably excessive and confusing. Appreciate you guys taking the time to make it clearer. You know, I don't even have any comments on it. I think it's great and looks good. The suggested changes to the solar bylaw. So you stated that we were sort of against changing and adopting standards. I don't think that's really accurate. So I think, you know, the last time this came up, we weren't against, I'm just not speaking for everybody here, I guess for myself. It just seemed a little bit too restrictive last time. And so I actually think a lot of what you've proposed here through Athol makes a lot of sense as far as changes. I think some of the overly restrictive pieces last time came into the whole, like, what people are going to say if it's their property and you tell them they can't do certain things, right? You've got to have regulations. And I think last time they might have just been a little bit too restrictive, but these seem, you know, they have some more latitude than last time with some larger areas and stuff. So that's just sort of my 2 cents on the solar bylaw. So I'm much more in favor of this. And I know it's not a finished document. What you had there, you had a number of bullet points, and I don't agree with all of them, but a number of them I do. So anyway, I'll stop there for a second, see if anybody else has any comments on those first two.
All right, I got my 2 cents. First, I totally agree that this, like I said the whole time, is I think you guys did a great job with overdoing that. It's so much easier to follow and know what you can and can't have. And it's just, I think it's well done. Thank you for taking that on. And then the solar bylaw, I wasn't part of the board before, so I don't know 100% what was said or wasn't said. But I think what you have proposed, a lot of it kind of makes a little bit of sense there. I mean, again, not every single detail, but I think a lot of it, because I remember complaints about some of the solar fields that we have now were, you know, things too close and too high and to this and to that. And if we can kind of make some kind of not restrictions, but get it you know, a little bit more formalized, I think that would be a good idea, especially with batteries coming into play, because I think solar fields could get a lot bigger and that could start taking up a lot of the woods. And the last thing we want to lose in Hubbardston is all of our woods, because that's what people want when they come out here. So I think that could be a good path, and that's my 2 cents on that.
Thank you.
Okay, thanks.
If I could offer just a comment on the solar also, looking back a few years when one of the solar fields, I forget which one specifically, was being put in, they went crazy cutting down trees. I don't know if you remember, Dan, but it was a real issue. And as I was listening to you, Alice, and looking at the things that you guys were dealing with, my comment would be those areas that on the bylaw or the prescribed one that are still open-ended, meaning open-ended on the Hubbardston side, we don't have a limit on this, we don't do this, etc. Based on the experience of the past a few years back, I would like to see those open-ended things closed up tight so that, and I like the Athol idea. I think you mentioned they have a meeting with the company before anything's even done. And all of these things can be really spelled out, just so that some of these things, like cutting down trees, et cetera, can be brought up and handled in the beginning so that the company just doesn't go crazy.
Sounds good. Thanks, Jeff. Okay, if anyone has anything else, feel free to chime in as I move along here, but I'm gonna, I guess, go two at a time because that worked. So the next two, this might be more than two, but the suggested addition of battery energy storage bylaw, we just sort of talked about that, and I agree with Katie. It's new-ish and should have a place. So you know, I clearly you've thought of that, and you know, I think that's a good idea. And then the land use chapter of the master plan, more findings sort of than suggestions, I guess I would say. And I'm just happy that you guys have finally just about got there with this, because it's so easy to just push it off. So appreciate that again. So those are just C and D there. I don't know if anyone has any comments on those two, or if you want me to move on, but feel free.
Dan, this is Francois, if I can, quickly. I just want to make sure that there's a clear distinction between two elements of the battery storage. One has to do really with the solar facilities themselves, which at this point in time, as we had the experience, and I just want to reiterate this here, because we had this very recently with 147. Back, I think, about a year and a half ago to 2 years, they did receive an approval to go ahead and build a battery storage facility. We do believe that there is a need in the solar bylaw itself to put in the elements for battery storage, so that we are in, so there's no question about the ability to do so. The battery storage energy system facilities, which are independent of the solar system, is a separate item. I just want to make sure that people understand that there's these are two elements, and I think both are important. We just need to consider them separately. That's the only clarification I want to make here.
Yep, thank you, Francois. I did know that, but that is was not clear in what I said. So that was a very necessary clarification. Thank you.
I have some comments on number 4, the land use chapter. A lot of our land isn't built upon, but also a lot of it is owned by DCR and open space and North County Land Trust. And I think that is a large reason why a lot of it is not developed.
Right.
As for allowing the 1 acre lots, that scares me because of, I don't want to turn into Gardner, where I lived in Gardner for a very short period of time when I bought my first property and lived in it to rent out the second, you know, in order to have a house. And I could reach out my window and ask for eggs from my neighbor. And that's what I don't want Hubbardston to turn into. So when you start getting into 1 acres, that can get a little, if you really start packing in the town, it could get kind of scary. So I would proceed with caution with dropping it for that one. And also, but I do believe that allowing the more in-law apartments that aren't actually in-laws, because you know most of them aren't either. But I do agree that that could be an option for people to not only be able to afford their house, because if they have an option of renting out to either Airbnb or to a person to help them cover costs with their mortgage, I think that could help people move into town and actually afford a decent house for the prices that we're selling. So I think that could be a very good, interesting fixing that part. So that's my 2 cents on number 4.
Okay, thank you. If there's nothing else, I'm going to move on. So the next one would be the expiration of rate of development bylaw. So this is interesting. So this in a generation before planning board was a massive deal. So this 2001, when it was proposed, I actually moved here in 2002 with many other people. And that was sort of the height of the boom. And there were a lot of communities like ours, our little town, who were scared that it was just going to turn into some other sort of type of town. So this was, you know, brought upon by that time frame by, you know, previous planning boards who felt very strongly and had massive support in putting this sort of moratorium in place. I don't know what the numbers were back then, if they were in the high teens or 20s. restrictive, but I know that that's why it went in. And I realize over the last 15 years or more, it's gotten nowhere close to that, but I'm not all that in favor of getting rid of it.
Yeah.
So, I don't know exactly what form it has to be in, but I'm glad it's there.
I would agree with you, Dan, on that one, because look at what's happening to Rutland right now.
And hold
It's
it.
absolutely insane over there on how many houses are getting slammed in that little town. It is not going to be the same little town. It's never going to be the same little town because of the amount of buildings that are going in over there, that's fine for them. But a lot of people come to Hubbardston because they don't want that. They want a little bit of privacy and a little bit of quiet, not too much, but I mean, at the same time, I born and raised here. And let me tell you, I started going to school and the bus had like 12 kids on it. And by the time I got to 12th grade, we had like 2 kids to each seat. By the time I was in high school, we had to split the high school in half because we couldn't fit in the school all at once. Okay, it was insane the amount that this town grew in a very short period of time. It can happen again. I'm not saying it's gonna, and 28 is kind of a high number, and we haven't hit it. But again, at the same time, I kind of like that number being there just to be on the safe side.
So just to add to that, so yes, that was my next point is it taxes schools, town services, all that sort of taxes. I didn't mean that's not the right word, but it stresses to schools, town services, all that sort of thing. Now, this doesn't fully restrict us from different sort of I can't remember the chapter number, Alice, I don't know if you do, for like when a subdivision comes in, we have to have protections against that. This doesn't restrict us from that. That's separate from that. I can't remember exactly all the
You mean the
terminology.
40B?
Yes, 40B. So that's a sort of separate thing too, that we need protection against, which we can't necessarily restrict or eliminate from possibility, but we can severely restrict or put restrictions on it, which may make it not, something that somebody would want to do. Anyway, all that being said, I don't know if anyone has anything else on that, but that I do think there's some benefit, and I think there's probably a lot of town support for having something in place.
Dan, Bill Holmans.
Yes, Bill.
Also, all the work that Alice has done with the affordable housing, that really helps the town out because the town has always had that on the plate and has never done anything with it. For all the work she's done and everything that we're bringing that's actually going to happen, that takes us off the plate for that 40B also. It doesn't make it so bad. We don't want to end up like Rutland and have the mess they have over there.
Yep. Good point. Yep.
Can I quickly interject here also? This is specifically regarding to Article 6, the rate of development, the expiration. It's kind of interesting that this is happening right now. And the reason I'm mentioning this here is because there's a huge demographic shift across the nation as a result of COVID, where there is a very, very big move from urban areas into suburban areas. Demographic shifts happens in ebb and flows. We had it in 2001 after the 9/11, and we're seeing it again. I'm just saying is that the town has to make a decision as to what it wants to be. And I have my own opinion, but I think we need to listen also and take a look at what the town's opinions is. The fact that this expires this year, I think, is an opportune time for the town to view it. Also in terms of the perspective of if COVID is and continues to have an impact, and people from urban areas decide that they do want to move into much less urban areas and sometimes even rural areas and communities such as the ones we have in Hubbardston, we really need to understand whether or not this is something that the community wants to adopt and be open to, or whether or not this is something that they do not, and the impact that it has in a community such as ours. So I think it really is an important element for us to review as a town, and it be seriously discussed, because this is going to have an impact if we ignore it.
It is. And then there are other pieces of this as well that matter. We are, I was part of the, we've all heard it over the last few years, but I was on the task force that was evaluating whether or not to close schools or not. Then there's the other side of this. So many of the schools within the area are, up to 60% empty, 40 to 60% empty. I'm not necessarily saying Hubbardston right now, but because that's the case, and the school committee and administration within the district is talking about consolidation and all that, do people want more people come in to fill the school up more so their school doesn't get closed? I'm not advocating that. I'm just saying it's necessary to get everybody's opinion on either side, right? So I think it's because there are other pieces of this. It's important to make sure we understand that everybody gets a chance to chime in.
Well,
If I could, sorry, Katie, but if
No.
I could just comment and in regards to what Francois was just saying, and also you, Dan, I understand both Katie and your position, but my concern is, bottom line, one thing that is common right now is we need additional revenue, whatever it might be, whether it's adding people to the tax list or getting businesses to come in. And that's not going to go away, and it's a need that's not going to go away. So I would want to be very cautious about being too restrictive, so that in the sense we're turning people away or they can't come in. I think it's a delicate balance. It certainly needs something that we all should be sitting down and talking about, because the bottom line is we need more money to keep this town going. At least that's my opinion.
And
I-
also, we have lost 35% of our school population since 2005.
Correct.
okay. So
It
that's
is quite well established that the median family income in our town can't afford the median house that's for sale. It's not well balanced. So that decline in student population is likely to continue.
Katie?
Okay, so I understand not, the tax, wanting more houses in for tax purposes, but the number 28, that's large amount of buildings going in a town, and that would definitely, I think, if we started having clusters of buildings come up, would raise a few eyebrows from some of our folks. But also, the other point that I was originally wanted to make was a lot of the reason why our schools, the numbers are down, is because we have such a higher senior population. They're empty nesters. And I'm not
Right.
saying that thing, but what I am saying is eventually they're going to go somewhere, whether it's they're going to retire down in Florida, or they're going to go into senior housing or somewhere else. We won't talk about that part, but they're going to go somewhere, and somebody has to buy their house. Okay. The odds are it's not going to be all seniors that buy senior houses. It's going to be, families starting to move in. So I think as time shifts, we're probably still going to decline a little bit, because we do have that large baby boomer population that's starting to hit, and they're not going anywhere. They're not, but eventually they are. What happens if we start to have the swing the other way and the schools start going back in, but we have all these extra houses on top of it? We're going to have to start looking at, we won't have enough room. And that's not a short-term problem whatsoever, but that could possibly be a problem again. I've already seen it happen once. I grew up with it, and it, will happen, or it could, I can't say it will, it could very well easily happen again, especially when seniors start to move.
Dan, if I may, this is Francois again. I think this discussion has prompted some very interesting opinions. I think obviously everybody here has a lot of different perspectives and views, and we only represent ourselves, a very small group of the general population that we have. The reality is that in July of this year, July 1, 2021 specifically, this expires. And I think it is important for us to get a larger percentage of our population involved in the discussion, because either it expires or we do something where there's some other limitations that are put in or something of that nature. I think, in my opinion, it may make sense, and this is just a suggestion, that there be some forums that are set up for this discussion, so the inputs can be brought into view by both the planning board, the select board, and by even just by town government itself, because this is going to have a huge impact in one way or the other. And I don't think that we ourselves are going to resolve it, but we need to listen to what our population in our town really is interested in viewing. And that's just my 2 cents is I think we need to open this up for a broader discussion, because I don't think a lot of people are aware that this expiration is happening this year. And
No, the other way to, sorry, agreed. And the other way to do that without, and I'm not against forums by any means. Love more meetings. The other way to do that is to put an article on the warrant for town meeting, and people will be able to choose then. Do you want to extend this, that is currently something that we have or not, right? I mean, it's a way to have, do some advertisement that it's going to be on there. We're going to send the warrant to everybody. They can all read it beforehand and all that. But that's a way to have people decide right there. Is just have it on there.
I
or
agree.
not.
It's a good, it is a way of doing it. I do caution, however, that by doing so, you're basically providing a yes or no situation. And the concern that I think we need to look at is that I don't think it necessarily is a binary situation right now. We need to better understand if there are other positions that the town potentially needs to take, not just the ones that were put in place back in 2005, but rather the reality of nowadays. I mean, we have COVID, we have a decreasing revenue in town, we have an aging population, we have people who are looking at this here as wanting to be a rural community. I think those perspectives, once we listen and hear to them, we may come up with potentially other other suggestions. I agree that meetings to have for the sake of having a meeting is not necessarily the most productive thing. But this is, in my opinion, this is an important element. And I think getting a broader sense of what the community, if the community does not respond, then yes, so be it. And I agree, then maybe just putting a binary situation might be the only way of prompting that discussion. But I do believe that there are enough intelligent and good people in town that are going to realize that this has a significant impact on us. That's just my point I wanted to make. Thank you.
Folks, Bill Homans.
Sure, Bill. And then
Just,
Alex.
I wanted to rewind a little bit. When I first got elected to the planning board, one of the major things that was discussed and why I ran was because we wanted to entice more businesses to come to town, because we don't have enough tax revenue to have all the things we want, like a new police fire station and elderly center and all those things that we talk about. You're also one of my first few planning board meetings. We were told by an individual that came in and said a town next to us did away with all their building requirements and allowed everybody to build everywhere they wanted it. And they said over the next 5 to 10 years, that town is going to be upside down and their tax revenue is it's going to be terrible. The tax rate's going to go out of control. I think we need to keep a control on the amount of homes being built, because the fact that every home I don't know if I have the number right here or not, but it's like 1.5 to 2 children per home. The amount of taxes that we can collect for that home doesn't cover the cost of the school. So our taxes go up because of that. If we can entice more businesses to come in here in whatever way we can find to do that, that would offset a lot of this and it would make it a lot better. I think we have to keep that in mind.
Thanks, Bill.
We could sponsor a warrant article that extends it for an additional year while we digest the recommendations in the master plan and come up with something better. That would be an easy, quick.
Can I just
Exactly.
interject here? I mean, this hasn't been an issue for how many years? I mean, we allow 28 and we've got 1 year as a max of 14.
12.
What is the concern?
Well, I think we stated the concern. It was during the boom, it was getting close to that. And so it sort of came up. And if another boom's going to come, it's not, I guess the concern is that we have to deal with something expiring. So why not, discuss it like we are and then put it out there for people to decide whether it be like they did last time, if they want to extend it as it is or not.
Why not modify it when the need becomes a reality?
Because it's going to expire.
It's going to expire.
And it's not,
So leave it like it
process.
is.
but it's not an overnight process to put it back in
Chris,
place.
this is Bill Homans and back.
Well, building 400 houses isn't an
Here.
overnight process either.
Chris, Bill Homans.
Yeah.
going back to experience, like what Katie had explained to you about what happened with her growing up here in school, I also lived here and worked here, and there was homes going up everywhere in places they shouldn't have, and a lot of the rules were kind of overlooked. People were building homes and making a lot of money all overnight. I think we need to have some sort of cap and control on it. I don't want to stop the building to happen here, but we have to take a look at that, because if this happens all over again, we're going to be behind the 8 ball. And I don't think the outlook to see what happens tomorrow and we can deal with it next year. We really at least keep it in place so we can really look at it as a group. Talk about it as a town, that what we all feel is the best way to go here, but we really need to do something to keep it going, to protect ourselves.
I agree. I agree with everything you're saying, and maybe you misunderstood me. I see no reason to change it as it is. We haven't even come close. We haven't even come close to that maximum number yet. So it's really a non-issue.
So you're suggesting to keep it what it is and extend it?
Yeah, why not?
Okay. Sorry, I misunderstood what you were saying. I thought you were saying that there's no need for it. I apologize.
That's what I also thought he said too.
Me too.
Sorry,
Sorry.
Chris.
Maybe I did say it that way, but you know, I think Alice alluded to the maximum houses in any one given year was 14, and we've got it capped at what, 28? So I don't see where it's
Yeah, my only concern with that is it's building units, it's not houses. So let's say our dream came true and we actually were able to redo our gravel pit and put in 40 units of desperately needed senior housing. This wouldn't allow it.
okay. So the day we find out we're capable and able to do that, then we change the bylaw.
Well,
And then what? Change it back after? Just like, quick, poof, poof, poof.
I mean, we can, I think honestly, a better solution is to extend it for a year while we study it.
I agree. I think that was, I was going to suggest that before you said it. So that and it's a pandemic. So to get input from people is very difficult. So this is clearly a really important item. So to get people's views on it gives us a little bit more time to do it. And we haven't changed anything within that year. I think that's a good idea.
I mean, I'd be open to 2 years. I don't think we should make it 15 years like this one was. I think that's just crazy.
I think you present a very good option here that, I mean, if this is extended by 1 year, it opens up the discussion also during the town meeting. And I think at that point in time, people will recognize what we are potentially confronted with. And that will allow individuals to start thinking about this here. I think the fact is I think very few, even myself, I was not aware of this here until this was brought up, that we had this expiration happening. So I think it's important for people to understand this is going to happen if we don't do anything about it.
Okay, we'll get a warrant article in for a 1-year extension. And I'm sure that both the planning board and the select board are going to recommend it, so I'm pretty sure it would pass. And use it as, as a study period while we try to make it more responsive to our master plan needs.
Sure. And we're not deciding anything right now. We're talking about an warrant article, which we still have to talk about when we open the warrant to discuss each article. So,
Right.
that'll give us, this starts the process.
Okay.
All right, cool.
Do we know if that 28 per year limit has made developers not develop in town? Have we lost potential?
Chris, I think the main answer to that is development's been stopped in town by the 2-acre minimum lots and the 200 feet of frontage. So basically you can't build a house in this town for less than about 450,000 these days. And we don't have the demographic. We've really priced people that grew up here out of the market to a great extent.
Right.
So that's why I think there should be, in some areas, a smaller lot, but I know it's an uphill battle. They didn't get to be 2-acre lots with 200-foot frontage because people wanted development in this town, right? There is some talk about Massachusetts actually coming in and dealing and imposing their will like they did with 46B over towns that have very exclusive zoning like we do. So I don't know whether that's going to happen. I just think there's a certain fairness to, I mean, the only affordable houses in town are I've forgotten the name of Bill would tell me. Bill, what's the name of the complex up in the,
Out in
By
Pinecrest,
Princeton.
that's when the.
yeah,
if you look
Pinecrest.
back-
That's the only
if you
where
look back- if
place
you
that,
look back in the history, what had happened was the town had no zoning, they had no building regulations for the most part until Pinecrest started. And when that happened out there, it started out as a campground, these little tiny quarter-acre lots that were sold to everybody over the phone. And when the town found out about it, that's when they created the first zoning of 100 feet and an acre a lot. And over time, they increased it to the 2.5 acres, which a lot of people that live here like that, Alice. They do like the fact that their house next door is going to be on top of them. So I think that's another side of the balance also, because not everyone that moves out to Hubbardston wants to have a house next door that they can actually get eggs from. So,
but there's true, but those are quarter-acre lots, which you'd never propose for, a place that doesn't have any public water and septic systems. But a 1 acre lot is 4 times that size.
right, that's something, again, the town and everybody has to discuss and see what they want to do with that. But that's why that's why it went to 2 acres. Just over time, as everything grew, and people realized they didn't want to have that happen, they created those regulations.
I agree with you, Bill, and I also agree with the fact that we don't want to discourage people from coming in. I was just thinking, as I'm listening to all of you, in terms of the revenue for this town, it's costing us more every single year to run the town, if you will, just because of the world we live in. Unions, people get paid more, et cetera. And we think our main sources of revenue are retail and the property taxes. And I was just trying to sit here and say to myself, well, in the next 5 to 10 years, between those two, what do I think would be more realistic that's going to happen based on our past history? And I see more people possibly coming here to live sooner than we're going to have a bunch of retail businesses all of a sudden appear, even though we need both. And consequently, I think that's something we need to keep our focus on too. We need money one way or the other.
Okay, well, I think we've all had a chance to, chime in here. I'm going to move the discussion to the next item. We could talk about this all night. I think we will at some point have another meeting on this, and it deserves it. But I am going to move on. So be it. So the next one is the Affordable Housing Initiatives, the HHNC, VHB PIT, and tax title lots. My comment is just, I think it's awesome what you guys are doing there, and you've begun the process clearly, and have some funds to deal with what your what the plan is. So that's positive steps. Anyone have anything they want to comment on that before we get to the marijuana one? No. Okay. So the next is the limiting number of marijuana establishments. So I don't know. Do you have an opinion on this, Alice?
I think it's, I think if you set a limit of 5, you wouldn't have 5, for example. It's kind of like the housing limit, but we have had a lot of people that have expressed interest. So it's something that can be done, or something we can open to the voters if they want. Right now, I find myself writing letters to this. They ask, does Hubbardston have any limit on the number of these, of marijuana establishments? And I write back to them, no, because we don't. So if you want to, it's something you have an option to do.
All right,
Why would we limit something right now that we haven't even got one up and running yet?
That's perfectly.
Good point, Jeff.
My job as planning board chair is not always to advocate, it's to point out things that come to my attention, right? So.
Okay. Yeah, agreed. So I did get an email, which I forwarded. Alice, did you get that I forwarded you? from Damon
Yes.
a couple hours ago, and to Ryan, I sent it as well. So Damon, who's on here, and Bowie's on as well. I did get an email today that stated that he noticed the limiting the number of marijuana establishments was on the agenda, and he would share some ideas and language for Hubbardston, gracefully. And basically, what he submitted was a couple of suggestions on what the article could sound like. And, for example, one of them is 22.7 limits the number of recreational marijuana retailers. The maximum number of recreational marijuana retailers in Hubbardston will be 1 or no more than 20% of the number of licenses issued within Hubbardston for the retail sale of alcoholic beverages not to be drunk on the premises where sold. So basically, it's an example of an option that we might have, or the planning board might have to suggest in modifying how we have things. So anyway, I guess up for discussion. It's just sort of coming up tonight, but I sort of echo what was just said a few minutes ago, which is we don't have any yet. So it's tough to just sort of jump right onto a number such as 1 right off the bat.
I got a question. This is just retail sales to the public establishments, or does this fall into retail distribution? And does it also consider the actual growing facility? Or is like what kind of?
It's retail. Retail is more complicated now because there's delivery services that's now allowed, as you know. I mean, if you limited it to 1, you're sort of handing a monopoly in town, at least to Damon et al. Although you don't have to go very far to Gardner. I think it's just.
Or does it?
It wouldn't eliminate growing facilities. Oh. We get questions about that also, but
people fear new and unknown, and especially with marijuana, it's very fearful to a lot of people in town. I can't see a lot of retail establishments for marijuana in town. It's Hubbardston. How many can we seriously support? I know.
Don't challenge us.
Okay.
I mean,
I have to agree with that. It's if it was a gas station, I would say let's give us another one to keep the price down. So I don't think it's an issue. I really don't.
But if I can just jump in real quick. So, I scanned all of the things that Ryan, when Ryan showed us the comments on the survey, I actually saw that in a couple places. It said something to the effect, I'm just going to paraphrase, I don't want all this marijuana in Hubbardston or whatnot, right? So people clearly have an opinion on, a cap or whatever, would be in favor probably of some sort of cap. I guess we're just discussing whether or not that's, 1 or.
You could put a cap of 3 on, it would always be amendable, or it's.
I know, but do we really want to waste our time with this when it's like, no offense, in my opinion, probably a pretty moot point, seeing that we can't even get a second bank in town. We got 1 pizza place. Like, we can't even get food here. How the hell are we going to get retail for weed? Come on.
Yeah, but
sorry. I just find it a waste of time.
I hear you, but that's, I think that's our job too, is like to look at the sort of absurd, never going to happen long view that we can't see. So to put these, modest restrictions in place now that can be changed, like Alice just said, pretty easily changed, but just to have something in place so that, if so many jokes in my head, I can't even begin, but if something, changed in the future that we weren't really a part of, that we at least had something to start with and sort of go from there. I'm just talking.
And the other thing is everyone's bitching about taxes, and we're going to sit here and stifle it. God forbid we had 3, and there's a 4th for some odd reason. Like, I'm totally wrong, which I could be. And people actually buy a whole bunch from other towns. So, our population, would we really want to kill ourselves? Like shoot ourselves in the foot over tax, like this is tax income that everyone wants. That's what I don't get. It's all because it's weed. And that's the only reason why we're not putting caps on anything else. It's just because it's weed and everybody's scared, marijuana. Everyone's like scared. It's freaking weed, for the love of God. You know, I'm sorry, but it's just, I don't understand when we're
Well,
gonna shoot.
Katie, Bill Homans,
Yeah, sorry, Bill.
they do have limits on the amount of alcohol you can sell in town too. You know, establishments and liquor stores and all of that. So I think that's maybe where other people are coming from.
Yeah, have like a bunch of them. Don't we have like 15 places that,
In Hubbardston,
I think so.
you can buy alcohol.
Yeah,
Not
10 or,
not where I live.
Yeah, not legal ones.
wow.
Yeah, really. There might be some distilleries. I don't know about that, but no,
Well,
there isn't. So
I know about, have a vineyard.
we had 3 places that you could buy alcohol in Hubbardston when I was growing up, and all through the years I've been here, and that's kind of changed, but kind of a balance. And I think everybody's right. We're probably not going to get more than one establishment because of the amount of people that live here, and they're all around us also. So if folks want to do it, that's great. But if more want to come in, that's more tax revenue also. Or if the one that's here wants to grow and open up another store, that's fine. If people get really upset about that, I think other regulations can be put into place. And we don't want to have 30 of them here. But, and I know when we had our first meetings about this, with the folks came to the planning board meeting from the open hearing on it, they were all worried about everybody living in High Street with the one right next door. People are going to break into their homes and steal the stuff so they could sell it to buy the pot. But I don't think it's a big issue.
If I could jump in one more time, at the risk of being repetitious, could we please get the one that we presently have okayed going, see how it works, see what the supply and demand is, as opposed to trying to imagine what kind of a limit we should be doing now. There are people in this town, and we know this, who didn't want it to begin with, but the town voted to be open to having marijuana. So that was, we voted it this way, but I'd like to get the one going and see what happens before we start talking about, should we have another one? Should we not have any more of this or that? I think it's not productive in terms of time spent on it until we see exactly how the first one works out.
Yeah, that's fair. And it's not exactly a quick process we've seen, right? I mean, it takes some time. So they don't just sneak up on you. So I don't know. I agree.
Okay.
Okay. All right, moving on. So the last one we have is process for enforcement of zoning bylaws. So yeah, this was sort of near and dear to my heart, starting off here at the select board 8 years ago, but maybe 7 or 6 years ago, I was part of the ad hoc committee with a couple planning board members and a couple of select board members and an ex officio town administrator to go through to try to create a bylaw. First off, it was called the junk bylaw that was going to create some regulations and enforcement. And I don't think there's been a bylaw ever that was rejected by a larger margin than that one. So people did not want that. So, however, it morphed into, you can't do whatever you want, right? So, but we're trying to do it in the best, most economical way over the years. For the town, we don't have hearing officers and that sort of thing. So, the like you talked about, the zoning enforcement officer who was the building inspector, we were outsourcing. We were what we were going to use for that hearing officer to Gardner. We had a relationship on what we were going to be paying for that. I agree with you. I think it's important, and it's not in your purview to walk on someone's property to do it, but understanding the process. So actually, I don't know if Ryan's still there, if he's checked out, but I'd like to ask, I guess, if what his recollection is where that currently stands with our relationship with Gardner on this issue.
So Roland is the zoning enforcement officer. The building commissioner is the zoning enforcement officer for the town. The next step for a zoning violation, if it can't be resolved at the local level, is to bring it to court. So we, and I can forward it to you, a couple of years ago, asked council to weigh in on this process, just to educate the select board on it. And so a lot of these decisions come, like most do, down to money. So you can pursue them as aggressively as you want. It just, it can cost a lot of time and money for the employee that has to bring this to the court, and then the legal fees. So I agree, people shouldn't do whatever they want, but it is a question of, a lot like tax title. How much money do you want to put into the enforcement side of it, and for what result?
And do we have a relationship with Gardner about a hearing officer? Is that something that exists?
It would go to Gardner if we were to have a zoning violation pursued by our building commissioner.
Okay,
That is our authority.
right. Okay, all right. I don't know. I mean, I guess that's just a discussion on maybe for another day, but I agree with you. I agree with the planning board, and you know, that process needs to not be ignored, but you know, I think we've talked about it a lot over the years. It's a tricky one.
Dan, Bill Homans.
Yeah,
In
Bill.
my experience with the building inspector's office, I went numerous times with our previous building inspector to homes that had violated the regulations. And he went on the property, gave them written notice and verbal notice, and they actually removed the vehicles. So I don't know if that ever happened at this time and point with the problem we have on Gardner Road, but maybe the building inspector's office can't do that anymore. Maybe the regulations have changed, but I don't know. I think there's more than we can do. We have all these regulations we talk about, and we're having all these problems we're talking about, trying to balance out for everybody here. What is the purpose of all this if we're not going to enforce them?
And the other thing I wanted to add here is there's the element of gravity, right? I mean, it's very different if you have a smaller issue versus something which is blatantly an issue and is impacting and affecting the whole town. I think we need to account for those types of things.
I'm looking for a process. A process, it would be,
Yep.
this is the form the person fills out that's got a complaint. It's got 10 days to be evaluated by the ZEO. He reports to the planning board. The planning board has to have a hearing within 30 days. The planning board believes it's a legitimate complaint. We refer it to the select board, refer it to town council. I'm not saying that has to be the process, but a process. So it doesn't just go into the circular file after it's been passed around 3 sets of hands. You know what I mean? So
And I'd like to,
I'm happy to work at putting together a suggested policy on this.
I'd also like to remind that, I mean, there's the element of fines, and I do believe that fines have worked in the past. I do remember myself having gone to town, not with the select board or the planning board, but with other boards. And at that point in time, there were actually fines that actually were imposed on the offending parties. And I think so from that perspective, we have mechanisms that potentially can be leveraged and utilized, and they can present remedies. And I think we need to start having not only the process, but also start talking with this new zoning enforcement officer about making sure that this process is followed.
So team, I'm going to bring in Mallory just to quickly talk about fines, because this comes up every now and again.
She's got on mute.
Yeah, I have to turn my video off or else I lose connection. So fines is something that we've actually been talking a lot about in the building department recently between Rick Geronimo, myself, and Roland. Rick is our inspector, Roland is our zoning enforcement officer. Right now, if our building team comes upon a property, whether it be starting a project without a permit or they're in violation when an inspection is taking place, they are unable to issue fines because we don't have someone who can have a hearing if the fines are contested. So Rick and I actually have been working on getting a warrant article together for town meeting so that we can hopefully make a remedy for that. Just so we are working on it, but we can't issue the fines right now, but we are working towards it.
Would that also include like the car problem and things like that?
Mhm.
Okay.
Yeah, we just can't issue a fine. So our bylaws give us the authority to issue the fine, but if we don't have a person who has been designated to hold a hearing, if anybody wants to contest that fine, we can't issue them without a fair hearing.
What are
far-
you suggesting is who would be that hearing officer? Would that be part of Gardner's?
I don't know.
You haven't gotten that far.
We
Okay.
we just started because we've run across a couple problems where we really should have been issuing fines instead of just a slap on the wrist. The other option we have if we don't issue fines is reporting them to the boards who issue the contractor's licenses. So we're working on it.
Interesting. Okay.
This is Christopher. I think it's important to keep in mind that at least what drives this issue in my mind is the case we've been looking at is a flagrant violation. Like it's not even close. It's not a we're not being aware of this. It's really pretty extreme. And the fact that there doesn't appear to be a practical thing we can do about it really is a problem.
Okay. All right. I think that's it for these main items. Alice, do you want to add anything else?
I'll come back with some ideas for you with the process for enforcement. I'll work with Mallory and see what we can do.
All right.
Mallory
Awesome.
and Roland. And I'll come back with a bylaw, a proposed extension of the bylaw that's going to expire.
Yep.
And I will come back with the next step in the solar and the battery energy storage systems. We need to work on that. We were looking for direction on whether you guys are interested in pursuing that or not and supporting us on that. And it seems like you are. So that's great. It's been very helpful to have all your input, really helpful.
Yeah, no,
Hey,
this,
Dan, can you provide, or maybe this is Ryan, can you provide us guidance on the timelines?
timelines for town meeting?
Yeah, well, warrant articles, because I know there are deadlines for the.
Yeah, that's what I meant. Yeah, sure, absolutely.
Great. Thank you all. Planning board, do you guys want to stay longer or do you want to take a vote to adjourn?
Madam Chair, this is Francois. I'd like to put forth a motion that the planning board at this point in time adjourn.
Is there a second?
Bill Holman's, I second that motion.
Okay, all in favor, lived all I.
Tiger Eye.
Bill
Monroe,
Holman's,
aye.
Okay, I guess that's enough. So thank you very much, select board.
Thank
We'll
you.
talk to you.
Good night, all.
Good night.
at a
Thank
later
you.
date.
Thank-
Thank you.
Thank you guys for everything too.
Yeah, this is great. Thank you.
Bye-bye.
All right.
I think I accidentally booted Dan. Whoops.
I'm back.
See myself out. It's fine.
All right, so that was item 4A.
It's gonna cost you, Ryan.
What am I gonna do to him? He's wearing fatigues. All right, so we've got some items to vote on. We're item 4B, which is the Habitat for Humanity, the affirmative fair housing marketing plan and the local initiative program application for local housing units. Do you need us to act on those? Move them along?
If you're willing to approve those, then that coupled with our closing of the Ragged Hill lot would allow the Habitat for Humanity project that Alice spoke about to continue. So
Yeah.
it's part of their process. They need this in order to start seeking funding in volunteerism.
Okay, sounds good. Anyone have anything they want to talk about on this, or can we get a motion?
What would the motion be actually covering, Ryan?
So I'll put it up on the screen.
Okay,
The motion would be to approve these two items.
okay, I'll make the motion. Can we do one or put them both together?
I think you can put them both together.
All right, I'll make a motion that we approve the affirmative fair housing marketing plan as well as a local initiative program application for local housing units.
I'll second that.
Is there any discussion? Okay, we'll vote roll call. And yes, Jeff,
Yes,
Yes.
Chris?
Yes,
Okay, it's unanimous. And so item 4C is the municipal building discussion. We're gonna pass over that one tonight. I think we broached it a little bit, but that deserves more time than I think we're able to give it tonight. 4D is the special legislation for 2020 town election and town meeting warrant certification. Ryan, can you educate us a little bit more on this?
Yeah, so last year during the town election process, what needs to happen is the town needs to sign a formal document that says the election is coming. It's called a warrant. So this is posted. It's a vestige from another era, and it's also a vestige from when the town meeting warrant also included the election cycle as part of some older ways of doing business. So the town must post the election warrant, and we did not post that election warrant. So although in all the other elections in the town meeting, this was done correctly, that one piece of paper was not approved by the Board of Selectmen and posted correctly. So this was an error by the town staff. Why it matters is the town voted to approve the school roof debt exclusion and borrow, and bond council will not authorize us to borrow without that document unless the state legislature certifies the election. So our town council reviewed this. They made an argument that we essentially over notified the public about the election, so that we shouldn't need to have done this or to be, I don't want to use the word punished, but to have this non-posting of the election warrant be an issue. And bond council said, just to be fair and clean, they wanted the election certified. So what council put together for us is an act, a special act of legislature that certifies the Hubbardston town election and town meeting to make sure that our borrowing is appropriately reflected by law. So what this would do is it would be brought by Senator Goby and Representative Berthium to the governor. The governor would file this on behalf of Hubbardston, and the legislature would approve it. This is the most common legislation that the legislature receives, because these errors are made quite a bit, not to excuse the error. So I spoke with Senator Goby last week on the phone, and she said she believes that this could be reasonably passed in about a month or so. So it would be much more beneficial than, say, rerunning the election or another path that would be more painful. So I'll put it up on the screen what this looks like. So these are the two options. One would be a more general, saying that the legislature is certifying. That would be option one. And option, I'm sorry, it's in reverse, but one is a more detailed, saying these are what needs to be certified, and the other is more general. The benefit of the more general act would be that it is more pliable for any use, but it's really going to be up to the legislature's House Counsel which one they want. So if the board's willing to approve this tonight to send it to the governor, then we'd be sending both of these options to House Counsel. And then council also prepared this letter to the governor, which details very specifically many exhibits of how we properly posted the election, that the election results are consistent with normal election results, and why it's so necessary to certify this election because of the importance of the school roof. And I know you've had a chance to see this document. So this would be signed by all the selectmen members and our legislative delegation, sent to the governor for filing this legislation, which again is a pretty general process, but one that is only necessitated because we made an error.
All right, sounds good.
If the board is willing to entertain it, this would be the motion.
I'll make the motion if no one else will. I move that the Hubbardston Select Board send to Governor Charlie Baker through Senator Ann Goby and Representative Donald Berthium an act validating the results of the annual town election held in the town of Hubbardston as written and prepared by Hubbardston Town Council.
I'll second that.
Is there any discussion? Seeing none, we will vote roll call. Dan, yes. Jeff,
Yes,
Chris,
Yes,
Katie?
Yes,
All right, it is unanimous. Next is the fiscal year 22 wage classification plan. I'm going to pass that over as well. I think that deserves some more time, and we do have some important decisions to make on whether we're going to be increasing beyond just the steps or not. If you looked at Ryan's notes, and I'd like to give that a little bit more thought and discussion. So I'm going to pass that over tonight. Ryan, unless you see a reason why I shouldn't do that, is that okay if I pass that over for next meeting?
The only reason it would matter is I'm going to present a budget to you on March 1st, so I'll have to include numbers. But that, of course, is subject to review and change, so you can pass it over. That just gives me guidance on what you're thinking in terms of employee salaries.
Okay, the straight up 2% then. So we'll pass that over till the next meeting. So item F is the fiscal year 22 town council contract. This is the extension of KNP as our town council for how many years? 1 year?
I like to do it 1 year at a time.
Okay. Anyone have any, I guess we can, if there's a motion to do this, feel free and we can discuss it or what?
I move that we maintain our contractual relationship with our present town council for the period of 1 year.
I'll second that.
And I'm sorry, and approve the contract as presented in your packets.
And approve the contract as presented in our packets.
I'll still second.
Okay, the amended motion was seconded. Any discussion? I'm just gonna say real quick, so there are a number of people in town who aren't in favor of the select board just extending contracts. Specifically for this sort of thing. In my opinion, it's 1 year and we're in the middle of a pandemic, which I don't think is a great time to change. And we have good service, so giving somebody just carte blanche forever is not a good idea, but I don't think this is a bad idea for this year. So anyway, any other discussion?
Nope.
Okay, we'll vote. Roll call. Dan, yes. Jeff,
Yes,
Chris,
yes.
and Katie.
Yes,
Okay, thank you. All right, we're gonna bump up to Travis now, if he's still willing. So we're gonna go to 5B, which is a winter storm update. Trav, I know you've had some long days recently, and you just had a couple of hours you're never gonna get back. Sitting listening to us, but thanks for coming on, and could you give us give us a little snapshot of how things are going and let us know if there's anything you need from us?
Sure. Can you hear me?
Yep.
Does everybody have my paper that I sent to Ryan?
We will in a second. Ryan's gonna call it up and I'll let you know when we can see it. All right, Trav, we can see it.
So as you can see, I listed out every storm like I do every year and approximate tonnage that we have used per storm. I try to give as much detail as possible so there's a little understanding. Not every storm is textbook, so I mean, we kind of got to do what we have to do depending on the type of snow and temperature outside, the ground temperature, and a lot of times you can see that I put that up there so you can see as we go the ground temperature gets colder, so obviously material doesn't work as quick, and depending on how cold it is outside, it depends on how much we really have to treat. A lot of times people don't understand is that if it's usually below 20 degrees, 20 or below, we don't normally treat, we just plow. When you happen to treat what it does is it tracks moisture, and then you're chasing it all night long, and it actually costs more because you're consistently treating so you don't have hard pack and everything else. So the roads might not be black, but you have plenty of traction. You plow them all night long. As of the storm that just happened the other day, happened during prime time. Everybody's running around, so we had to plow and treat. It was kind of a mixed bag, really. So, but it shows you at the bottom there what our totals of events that we've had this year compared to last year.
Yeah, that's a little surprising. I guess we've caught up recently, right? I don't know what I was going to expect, but that does it feel like that to you, or do you guys just feel the last week or two and it feels like more?
I think we got a lot of our events probably just recently. A lot of people don't, if it's not snowing, they don't really consider it. But quite honestly, I think we all prefer the snow over the sleet, freezing rain. That is just a mess. And especially when nothing's freezing, it really beats up on the equipment, the roads, just everything. It's not good. Right now, stuff is frozen, so makes the plowing a little easier. But looks like we got some stuff coming in for this Sunday and possibly Tuesdays.
So how's the,
As we,
go ahead.
as we stand, I mean, we're good standings with salt. Right now we have a truck down, so we're working on the Mac. It had a few injector issues, which we took to DW Diesel today, and all 6 of them are bad. So those are coming in the mail tomorrow, and we're hoping to get it back together and we can use it this Sunday storm. But we do have a full crew, but down a truck. So.
The prediction for next week is Sunday, Tuesday, and Thursday, Travis, where Tuesday and Thursday could be major.
Yeah, I feel by then Max should be up and running, which will give us all the equipment. We still have a grader and everything. We've been using the grader, pushing back the bankings, making way for more snow. So we're being proactive.
Okay. No, I think you guys have been doing a great job again. Have you received positive or negative feedback that you'd like to share with us?
Honestly, we've had many people write in with cards. Social media has been good, and we've had people call in and leave messages too. So I mean, it's all good.
All right, that's great. And then the sort of annual question, when we get into sort of the honesty piece, like that question is, another one here about sort of team morale and all that. How's it going down there?
Seems to be good. I was talking with the guys just the other day. Seems to be fine down there. It's like anything with all these long nights, and days just seem to mix together and you can't really distinguish what. So just like y'all, I think I like to get spring here and summer where the warmer weather is, and get the little more enjoying the days without looking at the back of my eyelids trying to keep them open.
Yeah.
Long nights, it's fun in the beginning and tiresome towards the end.
All right. Well, hopefully we're getting towards the end. Does anyone have any questions? I have another one for Travis in a minute, but anyone have any questions for Travis on winter update stuff or anything else?
How about his budget? Where are we at in terms of what's been allocated and what's been spent already?
We lost Travis.
Yeah, the budget question.
I'll get you that answer.
My guesstimation is he would have led with that, if there was a problem and seeing how we didn't have to deficit spend last year, correct?
We did not.
And we're a little bit less on the amount of treatments this year, and he's still got all the sand and salt that he needs. My guess is we're hopefully, anyway, is he back?
He's not. He's having a connection issue, but I can answer it. So we were at 15% as of January 1 with some moderate amount of events early. So last year we returned is 15 to 20,000 wages off the top of my head and spent the salt budget, but we spent the salt budget to fill the shed in order to alleviate some pressure from this year. So given the trends in numbers, we should be tracking a similar year unless, as Jeff pointed out, the winter really picks up. So I don't think we'll know till the end of this month whether or not there's an issue, but as of right now, I do not believe there is.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah, you're back. Ryan did I don't know if you heard Ryan, but he did give us an update on budget, which is a question Jeff had asked. If you want to restate that, feel free.
I think we're in pretty good standing as of the budget, and I don't see it being an issue. Like I said, with the electronic spinners and everything that we put into the equipment to limit the excess salt that we have to put out, has definitely helped with the budget and helps with the environment too. So I don't see an issue.
Okay. Thanks for that. Anyone have anything further for Travis?
Just real brief, that's a team effort. The guys down in the shop do a great job conserving materials, following their training, and doing what they're asked to do in order to not only keep the roads safe, but reduce our use of resources. And Travis is one of the best at monitoring his budget and trying to use the public dollars well, while putting out a really good product. So couldn't be happier with that combination of being the envy of local towns in terms of clean roads and also maintaining a reasonable budget.
Yeah, and just, getting better over time, right? Travis, you've been doing this for a few years. You keep adding to your, capabilities and providing updates whenever we need it, and keep getting training for the guys and all that stuff. I mean, that's really the way it's supposed to work. And that's just great to see.
Great, I appreciate it. There will be something towards the end. I want to go and ask the board. I've spoke with Ryan about it. I've gone to classes. I've talked with Westminster and other DPWs that are using it. I've done a few of the classes, and it's all about brine and the benefits of it, how it's beneficial to us. And I was talking and possibly, how the budget is, and you have money left in the winter budget. We would be able to get started in the brine setup. And I'm in the works of putting all that together. I do have an option to pick up a unit that is it's a 1,000-gallon tank with all electronic controls and spreaders on it, like our spreader systems we have in our trucks now. So it would be controlled by speed, and you can control the amount that comes out also. And it would be a multi-year use for this system, as like right now we put that green water truck together to do the dirt roads with, and we used an old FD plastic tank off of one of their forest trucks that they were not using anymore. We came up with a spraying system. It works, but it's like I said, it was something to try and get us by with dust control and stuff. By far doesn't get the job done as quick as we would get it and allow more product out that we need when we do it. This new system, which isn't new, it's used, would allow us to do that and do the brine on the roads. brine meaning it's a mix of salt and water, and it's actually less salt percentage-wise. And as we pre-treat the roads, which I'll have better numbers when I do this, but just as so every people can understand and see, it's like when we treat a road, we treat with a treated salt, so it's actually wet to a point. It's damp and it falls and scatters less than straight salt. But with brine, if we were to do it and pre-treat through the town, we could do it days ahead of a storm, or if we knew fog or something like that was coming in, I could send one person out to do the whole town. And I would be putting out less material, and it would be put down exactly where we put it. It wouldn't scatter to the edges. We wouldn't have any excess loss off the road. It's really environmentally and beneficial all the way around. It saved excess times of coming in because of water runoff through the course of the day. It does have a lot of beneficial. I talked with Westminster on it. They started out with a little situation with theirs, and they loved it. They had an ice situation that they actually used it on. It worked out great. And as we get there and we move forward, maybe even possibly because a lot of our trucks, some of our trucks actually have already a pre-wetting system on them. So you'd be able to actually pre-wet our salt, which we would actually use less salt coming out of the truck than we do now, along with a brine sprayed onto it. And it would act even quicker as it hits the road, which we would have a faster reaction time. Right about now, it takes probably about a half an hour before you start seeing it work. With pre-wetting and talking to everybody, and I've seen it, you're looking at probably almost 15 minutes instead of a half an hour when you see it actually work. So there's a lot of things in the works that I'm looking at, and hopefully, like I said, I don't see there being a problem with the budget at the end. And if there is some, I'd like to see if possible of purchasing this, because it is part of the winter situation, which would be a couple of tanks in this system. Lost them again.
Okay. All right. Thanks, Trev.
I lost you. I got you.
Oh, no,
Nope,
you've been,
you're
Did you hear me?
yeah, I can hear you.
Okay. Did you
We
hear
heard all
all that?
Oh,
Okay.
God, yes. Oh my God, did we? So okay. Well, I think that's it. I guess I should say one thing. I may or may not have promised that you would help with the demolition of the playground sometime in the summer or spring. If the parks, they were on our meeting last week or whenever it was. It was something I told them I'd talk to you about whether we could help, because they're trying to minimize the costs to be able to replace the playground, which we have some CPA funds for. So something maybe, over the next few months after all this stuff is done, maybe we can meet down there and sort of go over, what it might take for the DPW to help out demolition of the existing play structure. Is that all right to meet out there at some point?
Sure. I'll help in any way we can.
All right. Thank you. All right. You're dismissed. Thanks a lot. Okay. Next is the DPW fiscal year 22 to 24 union contract for final approval. Anything that changed that we need to know about, Ryan? I know you put it in what we received from you, but you want to just briefly state it so that we can hear it again and then move to approve it?
You approved the contract at your last meeting, but there was one decision point that I didn't bring up publicly that I think needs to be brought up. So In section 5.3, this language was requested by the union to be added to the contract. So it says that refusal of employees to cross a picket line of another employer, if recognized by the Teamsters, shall not be a cause for discipline or discharge. So when reviewing this contract, town council stated that the employees are not allowed to strike. And by including this in the contract, you're saying that they could, in theory, join in a strike. So he recommended that it be deleted from the contract. In my opinion, I've been struggling to find a situation where this would exist. The only thing I could think of is National Grid. And we wouldn't be using our employees in that way, nor causing them to cross a picket line. And if they did, I don't think we would discipline them or punish them. So I think council is being, in my opinion, they're doing what they're supposed to do and pointing out all liabilities. I don't think it's worth not approving this contract or reopening the negotiation for that language, but I would be remiss if I didn't bring it to you and seek your opinion as to whether or not it is something that we wanted to bring back up.
Well, what's the challenge in taking it out of the contract?
We would have to, we've agreed to a tentative agreement. We'd have to open the negotiation back up. I did talk to the union representative, and he stated that they do want it in the contract. They put it in all their contracts. So he asked that it be included, and he asked that I bring that to you to have it be included. If I went back to him, we would say that we'd like to take it out, and then the negotiation would continue from there.
Well, I don't see myself going against town council. I mean, that's what we pay them for, right? To look at these things and get their best advice on it. Seems to me
couldn't agree more. So
something to challenge here. We should probably go ahead and challenge it.
Now, just out of curiosity, I know you're dealing with the union, but what do our employees think of this? Do they have 2 cents into this at all? Like the guys down there, do they care if it's there or not?
So when I negotiate on your behalf with the union, I negotiate with the representative from the union and their elected representative. So in good faith, we don't talk to the quote unquote
Okay.
the guys about this, and
Okay.
can't.
Oh, I say, yeah.
So Ryan, you're basically saying it's a non-issue as far as how you see it in terms of our town, so just let it be?
Yeah, I'm disagreeing with town council, and I know how that sounds, so that's why I wanted to bring it to the board.
I'm all right with just letting it be and keeping the contract as it is.
okay, well, if you are and you want to make a motion, we can start that process.
Okay, I would make a motion to accept the DPW contract as presented and as we had previously approved. Is that okay?
Yeah, I mean, technically you approved it, so
Right.
the motion would be to reopen the negotiation and further discuss the contract.
So
That's
right.
why I'm bringing it back. I didn't want you to find out later that, that this was an issue. I wanted to make sure we were being transparent about it.
All right, so it sounds like, Jeff, you don't need to make a motion for that. Only if somebody wants to make a motion to the opposite of what you said is something that's
Fine. Yeah. Okay, I'll retract that motion then.
okay. So I guess, is anyone,
Well, yeah, then I'll make a motion to reopen negotiations and void that part of the contract.
okay, the motion's made. Is there a second?
Well, I'm kind of like on the fence on this one because no offense, I don't really like lawyers or unions either way. And I think they all kind of fall in the same category with me. Have both of them saying the exact opposite of what we should or shouldn't be doing. And at this point, I would like to err on the side and go with the lawyer. And I hate to say that. Sorry, Ryan, but open.
That's perfectly fine.
All right, I'm gonna second it.
Okay, is there any discussion? Okay, we'll vote roll call. Dan, no. Katie,
Yes.
Chris,
Yes.
Jeff?
No,
Okay, so the motion does not pass and things stay as they were.
That was fun.
Okay, moving on. We have the town administrator evaluation, item 5C, which is not due yet. So the due date that we had previously put on it was the end of the day on February 14th. Last time I checked, I think there were 3 out of 5 done. Have you checked, Brian, in the last few days?
Yes, Katie absolutely blasted me and 2 of you have completed it. So I'm just kidding. Katie was
Okay, so I'll send another reminder, but we've got a few more days to get those in, and then we'll have a chance to talk about them at our next meeting before Ryan's out of here, which brings us to Ryan's town administrator report. So you're up.
Yes, and because given the short week and the fact that I'm on duty, I didn't do a full report. The only thing I want to say is the town is now a green community. In the report issued today, just looking at it before our meeting started, and we have a case count of 14, which is down from 25 2 weeks ago and 21 1 week ago. And our positivity rate and testing rates, our testing rate went up, but our total positive cases has gone down. So still trending down like the rest of the state, and that's good to see. A lot of focus lately on keeping schools open. Our schools have been in hybrid for quite some time, so that's good. But maybe even with vaccines, you'll see a push towards even more opening. So we haven't given a lot of positive news on COVID, and it looks like things are trending in the right direction. Don't want to jinx it, but I wanted to certainly report those numbers as we've definitely reported all the bad ones. So that's it for my report. Just wanted to update the board on that.
Okay, thank you. Item 7, we don't have any policies to review. 8 and 9 are Erin Caton,
Kate, yep.
Caton, executive assistant. Thrilled to have her soon. So she's under item 8A for an appointment, and item 9A for a wage authorization. Separate, you want those?
Yes, please. And just briefly to talk about her qualifications, she has served as an executive assistant before, which is rare in small towns like ours to get someone with so much experience. We'd be hiring her at 18 hours a week to fill the executive assistant position. Talked with her many times. She's thrilled to start on Tuesday. And as you know, I will be departing. She's the type of knowledge to bring in when you're losing some continuity. So she'll be able to help in those aspects and maybe even expand her hours if that's what the board wants to facilitate more day to day. So very excited about this hire and very excited to have her start on Tuesday.
All right. So the first motion for an appointment.
I'll make the motion to approve the appointment. I didn't get fully the name, so I don't want to butcher it.
Erin Caton.
To approve the appointment of Erin Caton. And will we be waiving the waiting time on the wage?
The notification, yeah.
Okay, and also to waive the notification of the wage rate.
I'll second that.
Okay, seconded. Any discussion? Okay, seeing none, we'll vote. Roll call. Dan, yes. Katie?
Yes.
Jeff?
Yes,
Chris?
Yes.
Okay, now another motion for the actual specific wage authorization.
make a motion. Do I need to mention the amount? If so, can you fill me in?
You're just waiving your notification period on the wage authorization.
All right, make a motion on the wage authorization to waive the waiting period.
I'll second that.
Okay, any discussion? Seeing none, we'll vote. Roll call. Dan, yes. Katie?
Yes.
Jeff?
Yes,
And Chris?
Yes.
Okay, we've got some minutes to approve from January 11th. We were, was I not there?
You were not.
All
That was the
right.
one you missed, Dan.
I was in Florida. That was fabulous. Okay,
Can you zoom it, bring it, scroll down so I can see the date? Or tell me the date of of that meeting?
January 11th.
Thank you. Make a motion to accept the minutes of the select board on January 11th, 2021.
I'll second that.
any discussion? Seeing none, we'll vote. Roll call. Dan abstain. Katie?
Yes.
Jeff?
Yes,
Chris?
Yes.
Okay, sounds good. No committee updates from me. Anyone else want to chime in on a committee update at this point?
I actually have two real quick ones. First off, I just want to throw out there that Mark from the open space worked with the Boy Scouts locally out in the backwoods on Mount Jeff to clear a bunch of paths out there from all the tree damage that happened in December. So that way they could open up the trails for hikers and now cross-country skiers. So I think that was a good working. My son was out there hauling trees and stuff with them and for Boy Scouts. And I think it was a good day that they had out there. And I just want to throw a shout out to them for getting that accomplished. And then the other thing is EDC is working on another meet and greet to have about opening, to the public to ask questions in advance. So that way the right people can be able to answer them in a timely manner so we can present it. But to be able to ask questions, very specific questions about opening businesses in Hubbardston, whether it be a home base or, a actual storefront. So that way, if you were like considering doing something to, like say you wanted to open up a kitchen out of your house, like what are the steps? Like, oh, can I do this? Can I do that? Like what do I have to do this? And you can actually get the answers in advance without having to try to go down and poke everybody's brain in the offices. It's kind of to try to open the door for maybe the possibility of businesses being opened up out of houses. So I think that's a good step in the right direction to try to, bridge some of these gaps so it's not so scary.
Great. Okay,
That's-
thanks. Yeah, thanks. Okay, matters not reasonably anticipated by the chair. I don't have any. Does anybody have any?
I just had a question. Where are we, or when are we going to begin to deal with the temporary town administrator? I noticed in the folder, there were two names that Ryan provided and gave us some background on. For some reason, I thought we were talking about that tonight, but apparently not.
That's the executive session, Jeff.
Oh, it is? Okay, all right, thank you. Okay.
Okay, anything else from anybody? No. So item 13 is public press question and answer. I don't see anything's come in over the chat. I do see that we still have one attendee. Anyone indicate to you, Ryan, that they are interested in asking any questions here? No, okay. All right, so we have an executive session scheduled. Brian, can you put that up on the screen?
Okay, I'll make a motion that we adjourn from the open session meeting and moving into the executive session under General Law, Chapter 39, Paragraph 23B, Clause 2, to conduct strategy sessions in preparation for negotiations with the non-union personnel or to conduct collective bargaining sessions or contract negotiations with the non-union personnel, interim TA search. And after which we will adjourn from executive session with no intent of moving back into the open session.
I'll second that. Sorry.
Yep, seconded. Any discussion? Seeing none, we'll vote. Roll call. Dan, yes. Katie?
Yes.
Jeff?
Yes.
Chris?
Yes.
Okay, unanimous. We are entering executive session